The name of this book is The Big Black Fire by Robert H. Decoy, an uncensored biography of the first black heavyweight champion, Jack Johnson. The world sought the great white hope to defeat and destroy the black man who loved white women and dared to live like a white man. An interesting read. The biography of Jack Johnson is the suppressed story of the Negro in the 20th century, which both white experts and white brainwashed black scholars have tried to deny and forgot to put into the history books. No one is better qualified than Robert H. Decoy to tell Johnson's story as it really happened, ripping through all the vicious lies which have been passed off as the truth. This book is dedicated to those who were with me during the year that was, with faith, fire, and concern, the married couple, Odell and Pearl Pierce, my nephew, Emil Wilson, the parents who bore me, Robert Sr. and Cleo L. Decoy, the offspring of my marriage, Sherry Lane and Terry Lane, then two friends who prophesied it, Quinn Q. Williams, and my editor, Milt Van Sickle, with Rosdell Kahn, who believed me, along with Sharon and her father, Jerry Bloom. Author's Preface. I knew Jack Johnson well and lived with him for a brief span of time before his death. My father knew and introduced me to him. My mother adored him, as did all the children she bore my father. When I came of age, I spent more time with him, for as a child I had heard my father say many times to me, "Son, the only black man who was able to become a champion and a hero to his people was Jack Johnson. He struck a double blow, inside or outside the ring, with everything that he did. A black man who becomes a hero must be able to strike the double blow, one for himself and the other for the people that he was born of." Mention any black man in American history, my daddy would challenge me while I was yet but a child, and you'll find that none of them could hold the shoes of Jack Johnson. But his people wouldn't recognize him 'cause they were too damn scared and jealous of him. Jealous because he looked upon himself as a kind of black king. Jealous, on the other hand, because they were too scared to like him for fear of white folks. I used to talk with Mr. Johnson every time that I met him while I was a child, and then when I went into the Army, 1942 to 1943, each time that I met him, listened, and I found that when people would listen to him, he had the wisdom of all the ages, especially the modern age. I knew long ago, as I asked him questions, that one day I wanted to write his true story as he told it to me, piece by piece. But how else would I be able to tell his complete story unless I listened to him tell it in parts, so that one day I might be able to put all the pieces down in writing? This much I have tried to do, for Jack Johnson had become a god, my only hero, and as a black boy I needed a real black hero to keep going, somebody who showed me that you could beat the game only if you challenged the odds. Robert H. Decoy. Introduction. The Fireside Subject. Jack Johnson was not a black fire blazing with the speed of a demon. He was a fireside subject as well. He was the rage of humanity, blowing across the landscape of three or more continents. He was the Black Emperor come, demanding tribute of his subjects. He was the king of the commoner, who slept with white queens, showing only the black of his ass to white kings. He was the raging fire of black vengeance, a burning bush speeding across the highly combustible plains and prairies of social customs. He sang to them in bloody hot defiance. He was not only the talk of the town, but also of whorehouses, outhouses, courthouses, white houses, and black houses, of all palaces and kingdoms and empires. Everybody knew Jack's name, from presidents to paupers. The invincible, the genius, the coxman, the crook, the creditor, the collector, the creature of Christ, the black clown. They call him all of these. He raced his cars at incredible speeds, while his incredible conduct caused riots among the races. He seized the opportunity to defy death as daily died, daring destructive, dangerous, devious, deceiving, was Jack as he lived. So he died going out fast. Not even Jack didn't give a damn much for black slavery. He sure. Ooh, skip the page. Even bothering to slow down in 68 years. He went out speeding fast the same damn way he came in, as he had told Chicago motorcycle cop who had stopped him one day. This is one of the many tales told about Jack, which has been told, retold, documented, and tested, and vowed, and vouches fed, and sworn to on a stack of Bibles, so there's no reason to doubt that it did happen. This incident took place in Chicago, the mythical nigger heaven where Jack lived and spent much of his time. That particular day, Jack Johnson was out driving along Michigan Avenue in his white Stutz Bearcat with a gold-plated dashboard with a pretty white pink-toed blonde bitch alongside him, the wind blowing her pretty long silk hair as they sped along the avenue. How fast was he going? He couldn't even tell, for Jack Johnson would never want to look at his speedometer. He was in his usual hurry to get some place that he had to be when a cracker cop siren screaming came up on his motorcycle and waved Jack over to a stop. So anyhow, out of jealousy and envy, along with the sight of his pretty white broad, the cop began writing him out a ticket for speeding. Jack eyed the ticket and looked at the cop, grinning. "About how much is it going to cost me, boy?" Jack asked. "About 50 of them hard-earned dollars you've been making," replied the cracker. Now, we must remember that skilled labor in those times paid less than $2 a day, but Jack was still grinning as he reached down into his pocket, came up with a wad of money and bankroll big enough to choke a horse. He peeled off a gold-sided $100 bill and extended it across the cop. "Here, boy, you pay it, and hold on to the change." He put his car into drive, pecked a kiss on the blonde's white forehead, and laughed. "'Cause I'm coming back the same goddamn way," said Jack, as he as his car jumped away from the curb like a bullet, putting smoking rubber in the white man's face. Speaking of Jack now, as anybody could tell you, back there in his time, there wasn't a white man nor a bull alive who could whip the likes of Jack Johnson inside the ring, neither outside of it. Black as a tar baby with a mouthful of gold, smooth as a black satin, a champ from his soul. That's what we used to say about him, all right. They used to say other things lots worse than that about 'em. To them white folks, I mean. It wasn't just white folks, let's stick to the facts. Many a black pitcher, along with most educated niggers, hated which Jack much more than the white folks did. That's because he screwed up their minds so bad he could twist up the minds of a white man and old college-trained nigger just as fast as he could twist up a white woman's tail. They say that's what kept him into trouble all the time. You mean that's what gave him troubles all the time? Seeing old black Jack climbing in and out of white women's beds? Yeah, they even named it white slavery. Lord knows I had to go look that up. But Jack didn't give a damn much for black slavery. He sure was against that all right. They could go see him standing there on two legs to fight white men, but his laying between the legs of white women was something else. There wasn't no law against it, so damn it, Congress went and passed one called the Mann Act and made it retroactive to get 'em too. You ever heard the likes? That Congress and them courts is a bitch when it comes to niggers like Jack. It sure in the hell is. They even went further and made it a federal offense to transport prize fight moving pictures across state lines just to keep 'em folks from seeing how badly Johnson was whipping up on white boys. Shucks. Them was just two federal laws, man. It would be too hard and too many to count amongst all the state, county, and city laws that were passed on counter Jack and his shenanigans. Did you know that they went on and named that big one-on-one howitzer cannon after him during World War One, able to shoot more than 30 some odd miles? Sometimes they called it Big Bertha, but sometimes they called it Little Arthur for Jack. Hell, the American infantry and artillery soldiers used to paint his name on the bullet shells before they fired them into the German lines. No wonder about that. Did you know that Jack could jump 10 feet backwards from a standing position? And I ain't never heard tell of another man who could perform that feat, even jumping forward without a running start. Hell, the first time that he did was just after his broken thigh bone had healed, where a mean racehorse has gone and kicked him a couple of months before he did it on a bet with some white men and niggers who didn't believe he was well enough to fight again. Shucks, that ain't nothing. He once hit a Texas steer head on with his fist and knocked him plumb out with one punch, and it's a matter of record that he once did the same to a bull he was fighting, after he had decided to take up bullfighting and become a matador over in Spain. Man, Jack could do anything that he set his mind to. Did you know that with just a fifth grade education, he learned enough to teach himself to read French, Italian, Spanish, and that he could speak 7 languages: German, Russian, Portuguese, as well as English? And they tell me that most always he was reading and quoting from Spenser and Chaucer. He even rewrote Shakespeare's Othello, who he could play it on the stage. Only Jack refused to play Othello as a tragedy. He said it wasn't for a fact. And there was also a spiritual side of Jack Johnson too. Don't forget that, 'cause most folks won't admit that much in his favor. He used to preach in church, write good sermons. After he come to give up on prize fighting. Hell, he did that even before he got through prize fighting. He even went out into Danville, Illinois one night all by himself and preached a sermon to the Ku Klux Klan right in front of their burning cross. Yeah, them crackers just sat there and scared shitless and listening for 30 minutes or more. They figured that Jack must have come out with an armor of niggers hiding behind them in the darkness. They say when they saw him driving away in his white Thompson flyer all alone, they was fit to be tied. So they compensated by running around all night beating up on any and every nigger who come into sight. Damn. Yeah, he was always doing something like that, causing other people misery, but he gave them some joy and some hope too. Jack did more of the change in his country than any black man who ever lived, and along with you, include some of the white folks they all call heroes. Changed boxing? He changed the laws. He changed the people. He damn near changed everything when you come right down to it. He was a fighter, that's for sure, as well as many other things. He was all that and a damn sight more. Did you know that when he opened up in his nightclub in Chicago back in 1912, one New York white writer named Worry McCoglin wrote, Jack Johnson is unquestionably the biggest thing in Chicago, and I include the stockyards. And that ain't all that he wrote. They tell that Jack had a room up in the club covered with leopard skins and mirrors everywhere. He called it his Joy D. Field Salon for his entertainment with the white girls. It had them white reporters shook up about what went on up there, so McLaughlin asked one of 'em after she had taken her turn and come on downstairs, "What goes on amongst them mirrors and leopard skins?" The bitch said, "I really couldn't tell you, Chum, but you ain't lived until you seen yourself in bed with that black monster in 17 different angles and directions." See? Now, you know a white woman giving an answer like that to a white man about a nigger in bed is nothing to blow his mind even nowadays. Niggers too. Now don't be prejudiced even though even Booker T. Washington was so shook up that he had told them white YMCA in Detroit when he addressed them, Jack Johnson has harmed rather than helped the race. I wish to say emphatically that his actions do not meet my approval, and I'm sure they do not meet the approval of the colored race. See there, and just think, Booker T got caught in that New York hotel coming from a white woman's room by a cracker who beat him so bad he never got over it. Just jealous of Jack Johnson who did it right out in the open. But Jack Johnson did everything right in the open. He was the flash of light and the burning flame, the black fire, the black smoke. They call him Bo, the big smoke. They called him both. He was the Avenger, the Destroyer, God, and the Devil all rolled into one. He rode all right, crossed 5 different continents, burning up everything as he went along. Some say he rode in on that Galveston tidal wave. They say his being there when the tidal wave hit was a signal to the world of his presence on earth. Others say that the tidal wave rolled in to quench the big black fire of Jack Johnson before it got too burning out of hand, but it failed to make it, 'cause Jack was able to survive the flood, preparing for the things that was to come. If you ever saw a black fire burning, then that was Jack, for a black fire burning is nothing but spirit and force. It can't be put out like white fire. A black fire has to burn its own self out by itself.